Even though Democrats have now lost control of both the House and the Senate, President Obama was tooting his horn during the State of the Union address this week. 2 positive jobs reports and a plunge in the price of gasoline, having Mr. Obama telling the nation how he wants to see things happen during the final 24 months he has in office. Joining us now with a reality check, Jill Aitoro, senior staff reporter for Washington Business Journal, and Stephen Overly, business reporter at the Washington Post. Good having both of you here. A big and unmistakable middle-class thrust to the president's remarks and to his agenda. We heard it the other night, talk about tax changes that would benefit middle-income earners, those who aspire to be in the middle class, free community college, paid sick leave overtime. It was a middle-class orientation to the president's remarks, and presumably will fuel his agenda.
To some degree. I mean, there was the negative that I keep hearing a whole lot about in terms of the 529 taking away some of the tax breaks that were there. That's kind of getting a little bit of pushback from the middle class, who really takes advantage of that most in terms of college savings plans. But yeah, I mean, generally he stuck with his line in terms of supporting the middle class. Could run up with a little challenges in Congress, obviously, which is not on his side in a lot of cases, but we'll see. I don't know if it was a shock.
Reaction from lawmakers, particularly locally, but nationally as well, very much mixed. It depended who you were talking to. Democrats praised the president's remarks and his agenda because they know how difficult an environment this is. We've got wage stagnation, clearly, for many people, but Republicans were critical of the president's remarks.
That's right. You know, I think one thing you heard consistently throughout Obama's speech was talk of compromise, right? Talk of Democrats and Republicans working together. And you've heard this from the president before. And living here in Washington, we know there's been a lot of gridlock. There hasn't been a whole lot of compromise in working together. And so I think the question will be, in the last 2 years of Obama's presidency, can the parties sort of work together and pass meaningful legislation? You know, that remains to be seen.
There was a lot of suggestion that what the president was offering was not a plan that has a realistic chance of getting approved by the now all GOP Congress, but he was sort of framing some issues for the next election cycle. But that's 2 years away. For Republicans for the Republicans and the White House not to be able to find common ground for 2 years, that's a long time for the nation to be on pause.
It is. I think there is a chance, and I'm a little biased here because I report a lot on the cybersecurity side, but I think there's a chance that some of what he's proposing in terms of cybersecurity could get response from Congress and be moved along a little bit more. It's certainly in the public eye with the Sony attacks and so forth, but he's looking to improve how the private sector and government actually exchanges information. And he's looking for a bill, and that's something that Congress has not been able to do for quite some time, as hard as they've tried. So I think there's a chance there that perhaps the environment right now could compel Congress to come forward with something that is a little bit more substantial than what we've seen in the past. So there's a chance with that. Other than that, yeah, I think it's going to end up getting bumped along.
Congressman Jerry Connolly told us in the moments after the speech that he thought the notion of infrastructure spending, investments in the area of crumbling bridges and roads, et cetera, could be an area where the two parties can unite. That would have a big impact locally and around the country.
That's right. You know, one thing you heard Obama say in the speech was that there's issues people agree on, they just can't agree on how to pay for it, right? Or how to fund it. And so that's what I think will be the sticking point. You know, whether it's infrastructure or cybersecurity, as Jill mentioned, you know, there are issues that both Democrats and Republicans see as troubling, see as needing to be addressed. But the question then becomes, how do you pay for it? And in some ways, who gets credit? You know, I think, you know, going on cybersecurity for a second, the Washington community, the business community could really stand to benefit there. Both Maryland and Virginia are trying to position themselves as hubs for cybersecurity companies, those that serve both the federal government and the private sector. So if a bill does get passed there and we see perhaps increased federal spending, a lot of those dollars could actually be spent here in our backyard.
There was an awkward moment, maybe a revealing moment during the speech when Republicans applauded at a line that I don't think Mr. Obama meant as an applause line, underscoring the pretty real headbutting and angst. I mean, we're in a period of divided government now, so it's going to be fascinating to watch all this play out. But that was an odd moment.
There were a few odd moments, I would almost say. I think it was you've got the usual kind of quibs back and forth with Obama talking about how he has run 2 campaigns, so he doesn't have to run another. But yeah, there was talk of trade in terms of Obama having a little bit more power over loosening some trade overseas and so forth, which does not have Democrats happy at all. In terms of the local impact, I really think there's always talk on the Democratic side that this could lead to some outsourcing of jobs. Locally in Washington, we don't do a lot of manufacturing. I'm not so sure that that would actually happen. We have companies that do manufacturing, but those jobs aren't here.
Some folks who have White House on their resume have been active in a startup that helps other startups, 1776. You talked about that in a recent article.
That's right. So this group called Precision Strategies, which was founded by several of Obama's senior campaign staffers from 2012, they now run this sort of public relations, data, and communications firm here in Washington, and they partnered with 1776, which for those who know is sort of a startup hub. And they're really working with these young companies to help them kind of craft their message so that they can take all that knowledge and that enthusiasm that they have and convey it to journalists like ourselves and sort of get attention for their companies.
Help at a very granular and basic level with stuff like office space, but also some fairly sophisticated and nuanced aspects of getting a startup, of getting a concept moving forward and flourishing.
That's right. So 1776 really helps with office space. They help secure venture funding, kind of all the steps a young company has to take to really get bigger. Where Precision comes into play is really helping them get media exposure and kind of brand themselves so that they do get the attention that will help them grow in the long run.
Rebecca Cooper will talk with the company's CEO here on the program next week. So we're off and running. We've got the president's agenda. Soon Congress will have the budget. There's going to be lots of opportunity for the two sides to clash. What we'll find out is whether or not they can find common ground.
Whether they can find common ground and whether or not we see international situations kind of come into play in terms of funding and the Defense Department and where the dollars go. A lot is sort of, it's political, but then it's also dependent upon a lot of the environment around the world that's happening right now, I think.
Jill and Stephen, thank you very much for being our roundtable this week. Good having both of you here.